Welcome to another wonderful Bible story. You are about to hear Lot and his daughters, drawn straight from Genesis chapter 19, verses 30 through 38, in the timeless words of the King James Version. Are we thrilled to bring you this tale, crafted with over 5,000 words of rich detail, perfect for immersing yourself in the world of Scripture. Imagine the smoke still rising from the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah as Lot, gripped by fear, flees with his two daughters to a lonely mountain cave. What unfolds is a story of desperation, human weakness, and the unexpected ways God's plan endures. We will explore the consequences of sin, the daughters' shocking choices, and the birth of the Moabites and Ammonites. So, settle in, open your heart, and let this journey begin. Here is Lot and his daughters. The sun had barely risen above the jagged peaks of the mountains when Lot awoke, his breath catching in his chest as the memories of fire and brimstone flooded his mind. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah lingered like a heavy shroud over his soul. The cities of the plain, once bustling with life, however wicked, were now nothing but ash and ruin, consumed by the fiery wrath of the Lord. Lot, his two daughters, and the echoing absence of his wife were all that remained of his once contented household. His wife, who had turned back to gaze upon the burning cities despite the angel's warning, stood somewhere in the valley below, a pillar of salt, a silent testament to disobedience. And Lot went up out of Zoar, and dwelt in the mountain, and his two daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cave, he and his two daughters. So it is written in the 19th chapter of Genesis, verse 30, in the King James Bible. Lot had fled to Zoar, a small city spared from the judgment that fell upon its neighbors. But even there, his heart trembled. The cries of the lost still rang in his ears, and the smoke of the plains seemed to cling to his garments. Zoar, though safe, felt too close to the destruction, too fragile a refuge for a man who had seen the hand of God move in such terror. And so, with his daughters trailing behind him, their faces pale and their eyes wide with the weight of all they had witnessed, Lot turned his steps toward the mountains. The journey was arduous. The rocky paths twisted upward, sharp stones biting into the soles of their sandals. The air grew thin and cold, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the valley below. Lot's beard, streaked with gray, fluttered in the wind as he climbed, his staff striking the ground with each determined step. His daughters, young women of marrying age, followed in silence, their once fine garments now tattered from the chaos of their escape. The elder, perhaps in her 20th year, bore a resolute expression, her dark hair tangled and falling over her shoulders. The younger, slightly smaller in stature, clutched a small bundle of belongings to her chest, her eyes darting nervously to the horizon as if expecting the fire to pursue them still. At last, they reached a cave carved into the mountainside, its mouth a dark gash against the pale stone. The interior was cool and damp, the air heavy with the scent of earth and moss. A faint drip of water echoed from somewhere deep within, a steady rhythm that broke the oppressive silence. Lot paused at the entrance, his chest heaving from the climb, and turned to survey the land below. The plain stretched out in a haze of smoke and desolation, the once fertile valley now a wasteland. Zoar lay like a speck in the distance, its walls barely discernible. Here, in this high and lonely place, Lot felt a measure of safety, though his heart remained restless. "This shall be our dwelling," he said at last, his voice rough and low, as if speaking to himself as much as to his daughters. "The Lord had delivered us, and here we shall abide." The elder daughter nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line, while the younger cast a wary glance into the shadowed depths of the cave. They had little choice but to obey. With their mother gone and their home destroyed, Lot was all they had left in this fractured world. Days turned to weeks in that isolated refuge. The cave became their home, its walls a cold embrace. Lot ventured out only to gather what little sustenance the mountains offered: wild herbs, the occasional small game caught in snares, and water from a trickling spring nearby. His daughters tended to the fire, their hands deftly weaving mats from dried grasses to soften the stone floor. Yet the silence between them grew heavy, a silence born of grief and uncertainty. The world beyond the cave seemed lost to them, swallowed by the judgment of God. They were alone, cut off from the tribes and towns that once filled their lives with promise. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cave's entrance, the elder daughter sat by the flickering fire, her gaze fixed on the flames. Her sister knelt beside her, mending a tear in a cloak with a bone needle. The crackle of the fire was the only sound until the elder spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Sister," she began, her eyes still on the dancing light, "hast thou considered what shall become of us?" The younger daughter paused, her fingers stilling on the thread. "What meanest thou?" she asked, her tone cautious. "Our father growled old," the elder continued, turning now to meet her sister's gaze. "And there is not a man in all the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Sodom is gone, Gomorrah is no more, and Zor is but a shadow. We are alone, and our father's seed shall perish with him unless we act." The words hung in the air, sharp and startling. The younger daughter's brow furrowed, her breath quickening. "But what can we do?" she whispered. "There are no men here, no husbands to give us children." The elder leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father." So it is written in Genesis chapter 19, verses 31 and 32. The plan was bold, unthinkable, yet born of a desperate logic. In their minds, the world had ended with the flames that consumed the cities. They saw themselves as the last of their line, the only hope of continuing their father's name. The younger daughter hesitated, her hands trembling. "Is this not sin?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "To lie with our father? What would the Lord say of such a deed?" The elder's expression hardened. "The Lord had spared us for a purpose," she said. "If we do nothing, our house dies with us. This is the only way. We shall bear children, and through them our father's name shall live." The younger sister nodded slowly, her reluctance giving way to the weight of her sister's resolve. Together, they turned their eyes to the small clay vessel of wine Lot had salvaged from Zor, its contents a rare comfort in their bleak existence. That night, the cave glowed with the warm light of the fire. Lot sat upon a mat, his back against the wall, his face lined with weariness. The elder daughter approached him, her movements deliberate as she poured the wine into a wooden cup. "Drink, father," she said, offering it with a faint smile. "Let it ease thy heart." Lot took the cup, his hands rough from days of labor, and drank deeply. The wine was strong, its bitterness softened by time, and it warmed his throat as it went down. The elder daughter refilled the cup once, then twice, her eyes flickering to her sister, who watched from the shadows. Lot's words grew slurred, his head nodding as the wine dulled his senses. At last, he slumped against the wall, his breathing slow and heavy, lost to the world. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. So it is recorded in Genesis chapter 19, verse 33. The elder daughter, her heart pounding in her chest, stepped into the darkness where Lot lay. The air was thick with the scent of wine and smoke, the silence broken only by her father's steady snores. She fulfilled her plan, her actions shrouded in the dimness of the cave, driven by a mix of duty and desperation. When it was done, she rose and returned to her place by the fire, her face unreadable. The following night, the younger daughter took her turn. "Behold now, I lay yesternight with my father," the elder said to her, as written in verse 34. "Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father." Again, the wine flowed freely, and Lot, unaware in his drunken stupor, became the unwitting instrument of their scheme. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger rose and lay with him. And he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose, says verse 35. Weeks passed, and the cave remained a fortress of silence. Lot went about his days, tending to their meager needs, his mind clouded by the wine-soaked nights he could not recall. His daughters, however, watched their bodies with growing certainty. The elder felt the first stirrings of life within her, a faint fluttering that confirmed their plan had succeeded. The younger, too, soon knew the same truth. They spoke little of it, their pact sealed in the secrecy of those two faithful nights. In time, the cave echoed with the cries of newborns. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father, as Genesis 19. Verse 36 declares, "The elder daughter bore a son, and she named him Moab, a name that whispered of his origin from my father. The younger daughter brought forth a son as well, calling him Ben-Ammi, meaning son of my people, the infants, small and fragile, lay swaddled in the rough mats their mothers had woven, their tiny voices a strange contrast to the stillness of the mountain." Lot, now a grandfather, looked upon the boys with a mixture of confusion and quiet acceptance. The truth of their conception remained a shadow he could not grasp, a secret kept by the daughters who had acted in the name of survival. The cave, once a place of isolation and fear, became a cradle for a new beginning, the one marked by the stain of sin. The years that followed saw Moab and Ben-Ammi grow strong in the harsh embrace of the mountains. From them sprang two nations, the Moabites, who would dwell in the lands east of the Dead Sea, and the Ammonites, whose people would settle nearby. These tribes, born of desperation and transgression, would one day cross paths with the children of Israel, their histories interwoven with conflict and kinship. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab, the same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ammi, the same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. So concludes Genesis 19, verses 37 and 38. The story of Lot and his daughters is a tapestry of human frailty and divine purpose. Lot's fear had driven him from Zoar to the mountains, a choice rooted in the echoes of Sodom's ruin. His life in that wicked city, where he had once sat in the gate as a man of some standing, had left its mark upon his family. The influence of Sodom's corruption lingered, twisting the daughters' minds to devise a plan unthinkable in its intimacy and sin. Their actions, though born of a desire to preserve their father's seed, defied the natural order God had set forth, a transgression that would ripple through generations. Yet within this tale of error lies the thread of God's sovereignty. The Lord, who had spared Lot and his daughters from the flames, allowed their choices to unfold, weaving even their failures into his greater plan. The Moabites and Ammonites, nations born of this dark moment, would play their roles in the history of God's people. From the Moabites would one day come Ruth, a woman of faith whose lineage would lead to King David and, in time, to the Messiah himself. The Ammonites, too, would stand as neighbors and foes to Israel, their presence a reminder of the consequences of human decisions under God's watchful eye. Lot's life in the cave grew quiet as the years wore on. The mountains, once a refuge, became his world, their peaks and valleys the boundaries of his existence. His daughters raised their sons with the strength of survivors, teaching them the ways of the wild and the stories of their deliverance. Lot, his hair now fully white, sat often at the cave's mouth, his eyes tracing the distant plains where Sodom once stood. He spoke little of the past, but the weight of it rested heavily upon him, a man saved by grace, yet marked by the choices that had led him to this lonely height. As Lot's tale faded into the rugged stillness of the mountains, the narrative of God's people turned once more to Abraham, the patriarch of promise. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. Begins Genesis chapter 20, verse 1. Leaving the region near the oaks of Mamre, where he had witnessed the angel's visit and the destruction of the cities, Abraham set his face toward the land of the Philistines. With Sarah his wife and his vast household, he came to Gerar, a place ruled by King Abimelech. There, the old pattern of fear resurfaced. Abraham, as he had done in Egypt years before, said of Sarah, "She is my sister," fearing that the beauty of his wife, still radiant despite her age, might bring death upon him at the hands of the king. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah, says verse 2. What followed was a confrontation laced with divine intervention, as God appeared to Abimelech in a dream, warning him of the truth and sparing him from sin. This story, unfolding in the wake of Lot's isolation, carries its own lessons of faith tested, deception uncovered, and God's protection over his chosen ones. Abraham's journey southward marked a new chapter, one where the promises of God will continue to shine through the shadows of human weakness. Thank you so much for watching this video and joining me on this journey through Genesis 19. If you enjoyed this story retelling, please give it a thumbs up to like it. Subscribe to my channel for more Bible stories, and share it with your friends and family who might love to hear it too. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for more tales of faith and redemption. Until next time, may peace be with you all. God bless.